Right-wing pundit Tomi Lahren broke with Trump on the issue of Syria. I'm absolutely floored by this because her whole shtick has been, Rush Limbaugh-esque in that it's like Republicans are always right about everything and Democrats are always wrong about everything. So the fact that she disagreed with him on anything is already a shocker, but the fact that it's over Syria is like, wow, okay, that's... So I do have to give her credit for this, even though she's wrong about like 97% of issues. She's one of a grand total of 2 mainstream media voices that has dissented on this issue, which is beyond pathetic because the other one is Tucker Carlson. So the hashtag resistance media, everybody on MSNBC and CNN, mum's the word on another offensive war against a country that didn't attack us, that could potentially escalate towards World War III because Russia is saying, we'll shoot your missiles out of the sky, and Trump is saying, okay, then I'll respond. So it's unbelievable, but yes, Tucker Carlson dissented and Tomi Lahren dissented. Check it out.
It's time for final thoughts. Wouldn't it be nice if we could remove Bashar al-Assad from power, unify Syria, keep ISIS and al-Qaeda out, and tame Iranian influence in the region? Yeah, it sure would, but this is the real world, and the last thing we should do is continue our involvement in another Mideast disaster. Yes, the latest chemical attack in Syria was horrific, tragic, and despicable. As Americans, we feel for the Syrian people. But the cold, hard truth is, this isn't our battle. It's not our war, and we will not win it. Don't get me wrong, we have the greatest fighting force on earth in the U.S. military. But we can't win a war we don't even know what victory looks like. Overthrowing Assad doesn't solve the problem, not even close. This conflict is less about overthrowing a savage dictator and is now more about a struggle among branches of Islam that goes back more than 1,000 years. How do we win that? How many times will we keep sticking our fingers in the fire before we realize that spreading democracy in the Middle East does not work? How many times must we attempt to pick winners and losers in a civil and tribal war we do not understand? We've given the so-called moderate opposition in Syria weapons, funding, and training, not to mention the support of American troops, one of whom was just recently killed there. That's the spilling of American blood, sweat, and tears, and for what? So a year down the road, those same U.S.-supplied weapons can be used against us? We've been down this road too many times, and enough is enough. Yeah, as a Christian, I pray for the victims in Syria, but we have enough problems here at home. When are we going to put Americans first? When are we going to fight for our own interests and protect our own country? We've got crumbling infrastructure, an opioid crisis, veterans dying in the VA healthcare system, and a border that's barely a border at all. How can we save the world when we can't even save our own backyard? It is my hope President Trump will stick to his plan and pull us entirely out of Syria. Intervention has so far been the status quo, and this administration has certainly continued U.S. involvement. But this president was elected to break the status quo. We have nothing to gain in Syria and everything to lose. We cannot afford to lose more Americans in someone else's unwinnable conflict, period. President Trump, please remember, it's America first. Those are my final thoughts. Feel free to disagree. From LA, God bless, and take care.
It fucking breaks my heart that I have to do a segment where I give Tomi Lahren credit. It breaks my heart. And it shows the abysmal failure of MSNBC, CNN, the nightly news, and every so-called liberal, left-leaning outlet out there. But this is where we are. Now, some people point out, and this is true to an extent, they say, well, you have to be clear that the reasoning and how these people come to their non-interventionist position is different than how a lefty comes to their non-interventionist position. So it's not exactly the same thing. That's true. Like, for example, another person who is against this conflict, I saw some of his statements on it, Stefan Molyneux, the libertarian-ish, YouTuber. He points out, like, okay, well, this is going to increase the refugee crisis, and there is a strain of argument that comes from these kinds of people that has a tinge of xenophobia and bigotry to it, where it's like, well, I mean, listen, don't get involved and destroy these places, because then you just speed up, the horde of migrants coming to the West who are going to take away the white majority. So, like, yes, there are aspects of the argument that they make that it's like, of all the things to point out about why we shouldn't intervene, that's not even on the list. But either way, listen, at the end of the day, what's the old saying about a broken clock? A broken clock is right twice a day. Yeah, and when it's right, it's right. So the point remains, and I don't give a fuck if there's some sort of an alliance between the actual left and, paleo-conservatives or libertarian-leaning conservatives. As long as we actually achieve our goal of not going to war, then that's what you're supposed to do. How many times did Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders, back when Ron Paul was still in office, how many times did they work together? I think a decent amount, right? And I think, Rand Paul and Bernie sometimes work together now, whether it's on criminal justice reform or drug issues or whatever. So, yes, we have to not fucking do this. Trump used to say it himself. How many times did I point it out? I showed his tweets. His tweets were plain as day. What I'm saying is we should stay out of Syria. It's stupid. Why are we wasting blood and treasure and all that stuff? And Tomi actually makes a decent point here. She says, we can't win a war when we don't know what victory looks like. Now, notice, it's never talked about in the mainstream media. They always do the cheerleading for the war. They do the propaganda for the war, but they never explain and then that's why once we achieve goal X, we're gone. We're out of there. They never say that. They just talk about it in a way like we have to do it. And then and oftentimes what happens is with Libya, they do all the propaganda to lead up to the war. The war happens, then all the people who had bleeding hearts for Libyans, all the poor Libyans, now they have nothing to say. They haven't written about Libya since the U.S. toppled Gaddafi, and there's fucking open-air slave markets in Libya right now. So the people who are so concerned about the Libyans, we have to save the Libyans. Now that there's open-air slave markets there, as a result of our misguided intervention, they're like, now I got nothing to say. So spare me, man. Notice, they don't talk about the fact we're even in Iraq and Afghanistan anymore in mainstream media. I mean, there are people, I've gotten comments, people who listen to the show who say, hey, I was born, in 2001 when we went into Afghanistan. We've been in Afghanistan my entire life. I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy, and that's true. And then, they point out, the media never talks about it. They never talk about it. We're under all-out war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Nobody talks about it. Bombing 8 different countries. Nobody talks about it. And they never say, ask somebody who's in favor of these wars at this point. Define victory. So when do you get to plant the flag and go, all right, we're done, let's go home? They don't have an answer for you. Because listen, what was the original point when they said we're going into Afghanistan? We got to get Osama bin Laden. Well, guess what, bitch? He's been dead for a while now, hasn't he? Mission accomplished, get your ass home. But it's mission creep. It's moving the goalposts. And it's moving the goalposts because the real reasons why we're there are not the reasons they said. See, that's the part where they go, oh, that's conspiratorial. Is it? Is it conspiratorial? When the U.S. arms and props up 73% of the world's dictatorships? When we've been at war 93% of our history? When you look at everything that we've done, specifically post-World War II, you look at how many times we've overthrown democratically elected leaders and put in fascist puppets, it has nothing to do with humanitarianism. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with natural resources and geopolitical dominance. We act like every imperialist power ever. We just have a better shit-talking game to cover it up. So with Afghanistan, they said we got to go get Osama bin Laden. And then we got Osama bin Laden a long time ago, but we're still in Afghanistan. Why? They go, well, we have to get al-Qaeda. Okay, but look it up. Even back during, as far as 2008, 2009, there were less than 100 al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. So why the fuck are we still there? And then finally they moved the goalpost to, we got to defeat the Taliban. Oh, okay. So now we're there and fighting the people who didn't attack us on 9/11. Funny how that works. You started out saying we got to go to Osama bin Laden, we got him. Then you said we got to get al-Qaeda, we got him. Now you say the Taliban. Well, guess what? The Taliban fucking controls, 60% of Afghanistan right now? So you're not going to win that. This is the same shit. This is endless war. They're fighting a guerrilla war in their own country against the United States, just like in Vietnam. So you can't win that. But that's the point. They don't even want to win it. Because what is it? In Afghanistan specifically, it has to do with probably opium, but also with minerals. Minerals, trillions of dollars worth of mineral wealth are in Afghanistan, and we're still there. Gee, I can't figure out why that is. When it comes to Iraq, of course, oil is a giant part of it. When it comes to every one of these interventions, the military-industrial complex has a lot to do with it. War is very profitable for a tiny class of elites, and those elites are always making the decisions. When it comes to Iraq, what happened? They said, well, Saddam is responsible for 9/11. Turns out he wasn't. That was bullshit, but that was the original argument why we were there. We invaded on those pretenses. That was the argument. That was the premise. We got to go in because Saddam was responsible for 9/11. Well, we found out that was complete and utter bullshit. Then they just moved the goalposts. Well, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. Whoa. You just said he was responsible for 9/11. Now you're saying, okay, he's not responsible for 9/11. So there you go. Your whole war rationale is out the window. So what the fuck are you doing there? Come home. The second we learned that was bullshit, all the troops should have been out the next day. Because you lied to us to get us into the war. That's a lie. Or at the very least, it's just fundamentally untrue. So you got to say, okay, let's go home. But they didn't do that. They just moved the goalposts. And then they moved the goalposts again. And their argument was, okay, fine, he doesn't have WMDs. But he's a bad guy. Oh, he's a bad guy. And that's what they're doing with Syria now, too. Bashar al-Assad's he's a bad guy. Are you for bad guys? I can't believe you're for bad guys. No, it's that they're not a direct threat against us. We're supposed to use our military unilaterally for defensive purposes. There are a lot of bad guys. We're arming and propping up bad guys. What the fuck do you think the Saudi Arabian government is? What do you think the Israeli government is and Netanyahu with illegal occupation permanently? We're aiding and abetting a genocide in Yemen right now, and we have the nerve to pretend like we care about civilian deaths. Are you kidding me? You want to stop civilian deaths? Stop arming and propping up Saudi Arabia as they massacre Yemen. Stop propping up 73% of the world's dictatorships. This stuff it's unbelievable that they're still trying to pull the wool over our eyes. But now even people like Tomi Lahren can see through it. They never tell us what victory looks like because that's not the actual goal. The goal is geopolitical dominance and natural resources and continuing our imperialism. And the main point that I think really, really cuts through and gets people who are on the left, on the right, just all throughout the U.S., the argument that's so overwhelming to anybody who hears it is this, and she pointed it out. We're wasting how many trillions of dollars over there? And meanwhile, our infrastructure gets a grade of D+. So our infrastructure is crumbling. It's crumbling. And you're saying we need to go, rebuild Duma. We have to go bomb Syria. Bomb the Syrians to save the Syrians. A little bit of a weird contradiction there. We're gonna save you if it means killing every last one of you. Bomb the Syrians to save the Syrians. But the idea is, just like in Iraq, just like in Afghanistan, whether it's Kabul, Kandahar, Fallujah, we got to rebuild them. We got to rebuild Kandahar. You motherfuckers are talking about rebuilding Fallujah or Kandahar. You can't even rebuild Flint. Flint, Michigan doesn't have clean water. Detroit is a mess. Our infrastructure gets a grade of D+. You got to upgrade everything. You got to upgrade the levees, the bridges, the roads, you name it, the airports. Everything's got to be upgraded. But instead of doing that, you want to waste everybody's tax money overseas. It's not just misguided, it's also for illegal offensive war crimes. War crimes. And I don't even need to bring up to you guys that a guy who brags about torturing and a guy who brags about taking out their families, killing civilians on purpose, is not the guy who's going to lead a humanitarian intervention. So it really breaks my heart that I have to sit here and give credit to somebody like Tomi Lahren and Tucker Carlson. But how pathetic is it that that's the state of the country right now, where in the media climate, they're the only people who are bucking orthodoxy and saying, no, this isn't a good idea. They're the only people. So all the so-called liberal media, Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes, fucking Lawrence O'Donnell, goddamn crickets. I don't hear anything. Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, where are you? I don't hear anything. Certainly nothing anti-war. That's for damn sure. And even the Democrats, man. The Democrats. Listen, Tulsi Gabbard was one who tweeted against it. It was one tweet. Okay, I've been going nuts the past few days saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Even politicians who I deeply respect and who I have voted for and would vote for in an instance, I haven't seen anything they've said yet right now on Syria. to be fair to these politicians, they have said in the past, like, no, it's not a good idea. Let's not get involved there. But now the voice is needed the most, and I hear crickets. So everybody's got to step up. And by the way, you're not even taking a political risk. You think you're taking a political risk. You're not. This would be leading a moral countercharge, which everybody wants. Everybody wants the Democrats to be a giant anti-war voice that represents the silent majority of Americans. But no, they sit there quietly. Most of them are sitting there quietly because, they're part of this disgusting, grotesque, broken system. They get paid by defense contractors, the same as the Republicans do. They get paid by big pharma, for-profit health insurance companies, Wall Street, just like the Republicans do. That's why some of them are silent. Other ones are silent just because they don't know politically if it's the right move to make. It is! Go! Speak against the war. Speak against it right now.